have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard.
You could do this.
How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. 4 years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Okay, unmute.
Audio okay? So here you can see the definition, and I'm going to run you briefly through some of these phases. This morning, we're really going to be hitting on the first 3 phases.
I can't see.
I think they're the most applicable to what your line of work and what you're going to be doing. Appreciative education is the larger umbrella for appreciativizing. So here are just some examples of where we see appreciative education playing out or higher education across the country. So this is not just an advising model. I sometimes hear that's specific for academic advising, and it's not. We're seeing this in instruction, career services, financial aid, seeing it all over the place. So it definitely has application. It's essentially a way to work with people, a positive mindset where you want people to be successful. This can be applied outside of higher education as well. I want to take a minute and talk about this Gallup report about the concepts of our students being successful. So this was back in 2014, and they looked at this concept of support. And did I feel supported? Not necessarily was the support available, but did the student feel supported in their time? And that's hard to define. You could have students utilizing our services, but not feel supported. They could be coming to all the workshops, they could be coming to all the office hours, but if that support's not there, they're still gonna feel I'm on this journey alone. I'm getting the info I need, but no one cares if I succeed or not. So it's more than just providing services. It's going much deeper than that and actually caring about their success. So in this study, they talked about those graduates that felt this idea of support. They actually felt it, and it's not going into what they did for that support, but the concept that they felt supported by their institution. They were 3 times likely to succeed in the workplace, to flourish, to do well, to have positive performance reviews. It was pretty obvious of this concept. However, when you looked at that study, only 14% of students felt supported. I don't know about you, but you should feel awful about that number. That's terrible. You know, 1 out of 10 students, that's horrible. We should be supporting our students on a much higher, I would expect more of like 85%. But this is the reality. This is only a 3-year-old study. So we need to be doing better. But then that raises the question, what do students want? And so I did a little research, and you can see several different entities there of different reports, different studies about what do students want from their fill in the blank. And it's essentially a higher education professional, whether that's a faculty member, an advisor, student services, but someone that they acknowledge as a university official. Because a lot of times they don't differentiate, right? You're with the university, I'm a student. They draw a pretty clear line of who's university and who's student. What do they want? Relationships. Back to what Rita was talking about. And it's not necessarily they specifically said relationships, but they talked about different attributes that all tied to relationships. You know, I wanted someone that cared, someone that noticed me, someone that knew my name, someone that was invested, someone that wanted to go beyond the courses. There were a number of different reasons, but it all boiled down to this idea of relationships. And then what's most interesting about that study, these were the populations of those studies. One study was specifically done in England. One was done in Canada. Several with 4-year institutions. There were several with 10-year institutions. One was with working adults, specifically between the ages of 40 and 49 years old. They all said the same thing. They want a relationship with someone at their institution. They want to feel supported and connected. Now, technology. This is one thing I kind of want to demystify for you all. Co-authored this with actually a friend on the faculty. Technology does not replace what you're doing. It's simply the medium through which you connect with students. Technology as a standalone, how many of us run into tech glitches? Pretty often, right? Technology as a standalone is not going to save things. However, you need to be flexible if that's their medium. That's how they operate. I have had students that are a single parent, 2 children. I used to work in Columbus, Ohio. There's a Budweiser factory in Columbus. I can't tell you numbers. Worked at Budweiser, and they worked day shift, and their day shifts are quite long at Budweiser. So if you looked at our traditional advising, you could come see an advisor from 8 to 5, 12 to 1 was lunch. I had several students, that was their entire shift. They don't have time to come see an advisor, they're working. And then I commonly hear, well, they should be making higher education a priority. That's a choice they made to do that job. Well, without that job, they can't do higher education. So they're in a catch-22, and why is it their fault? Why can't we do something better to help meet the students where they are? And that's where I started doing a little bit of video conferencing. And so I can't tell you the number of weird things I've seen in Budweiser's distributing factory, but it makes a difference. If I have a student that is taking all online courses, why should they be forced to do an in-person experience? They're choosing an online experience for education. They should be able to do that. And so it's meeting students where they are, but it's recognizing that technology does not replace you. Without you, this is pointless. It's how you use this to connect with your students. And for this next part, I'm realizing I forgot your husband's tool belt I was going to borrow. So I have a great analogy of a tool belt. One struggle I see with offices maybe trying to implement newer technologies or social media, I often see, hey, we got to get on Twitter and we need to send a tweet about that. Or we got this event coming up. Why haven't we tweeted about that yet? So many offices just tend to go on the technology. And that's not how you should be addressing connecting with students. You need to first figure out what is the problem, we say in communications, but really what is the opportunity? What is it that you're trying to get? What are you trying to solve? And you need to backtrack from there. And so we gave an example. Last week, my college, we do programming efforts to military and veteran students and their dependents. And so last week we had a military and veteran kind of training meeting where we understand military lingo and their transitions to higher education and their roadblocks and things like that. And we want the students to come too. So then they can articulate their side of it and kind of say what's different from what our Military and Veterans Center is saying. And then the next day, we had what we call Unity. It's UNI dash. Every Thursday at 4 o'clock, the college, we have tea. And there's usually no set agenda. We just kind of chat and talk about whoever comes. And it's faculty, staff, grad students, and undergrads. But we sponsor one for military veteran every semester. And so that one was Thursday. And so we really wanted to publicize that the Unity. We don't have issues getting students and faculty to come to the info meeting, but we struggle to get people to come Thursday at 4 o'clock to a voluntary tea event. And so if you think about it, and we said, well, we need to tweet about that event. Well, what's the average age demographic of those who are former military veteran? You're going to be getting, if they're young, came right out of duty, maybe they only did a short stint in active duty, they're going to be in their late 20s. Generally speaking, you see most military veteran are probably 30s and 40s because they came back, tried to adjust, maybe bumped around for a few different jobs, and then decided, well, I'm going to use my GI benefits and I'm going to get an education. The average Twitter age demographic is not 30s and 40s. It's going to be more around your mid 20s. So if I send out a tweet about this military unity, chances are my military affiliated students are not receiving that message. And so that's why you don't want to go to the technology. You could be missing the mark by a mile. If I did want to go to social media, probably a better social media platform for that type of event would have been Facebook. That would have had a much more likely chance of hitting each demographic. And this is all based on statistics, so of course there's going to be some that are going to be different, but use the information that's available to you and make smarter choices. And really the best way for military and veteran is actually an email. Military veterans tend to adopt a much more policy-driven structure and order. And so when they attend institutions and learn that email is the official method of communication, you better believe they're going to use those emails. They're much more of a rule-following personality. And so just understanding the problem or opportunity to then choose how you're going to help them. I'm going to show you a little bit of some data collection that we're doing. And with us, I'm in an advising office, but it matters for everyone in the office. And so whenever a student comes in to me with an advisor, they're filling out just a very basic survey. Their name, their year. We have a couple of population questions, who they're meeting with and why. Why are they coming to see an advisor? We do have a quantitative and qualitative approach to it. The whole thing is rooted in appreciative advising. Once they fill out that survey, it's a freestanding iPad in our office. They're immediately sent an email that asks them to do a satisfaction survey, which is entirely rooted in appreciative. My whole office is trained in appreciative advising, including my student workers, my front desk, my recruiter. The whole office practices appreciative advising. This is our general numbers over 2 years of implementing this. So, almost 2,500 students have come into my office, and almost 800 have completed, at that time, had completed the satisfaction survey. And so this is just some of the information we found from the satisfaction piece of that. So right away, the first thing we're talking about, we're not talking about your advisor. I want to know about the environment. Because if you come into my office, and my office is not welcoming and not appreciative, you're less likely to share information. So if you walk in the office and a big issue I had with our office is that I have 6 professional advisors and then I see students as well. We only had 4 chairs. Well, in heavy advising season, where are those 2 people supposed to stand or 3 other people? I had issues with that. So all I had to do is ask and voila, we got some new chairs. It was not that difficult to accomplish. And then when you came in, did someone, either one of my student workers or my administrative associate, did they look up? Did they greet you? Did they smile? Or did they just keep doing what they were doing and just assumed you know what you needed to do? Or did you have to interrupt someone to say, hey, I think I'm in the right place. I don't know. I'm looking for my advisor. It doesn't send a good message to the student. What does it say to the student? Well, you're a bother. You're interrupting. We got work to do. You're being an inconvenience right now. No, they're dropping. Without students, we don't have jobs. Hey, thank you. I'm happy to see you today. How are you doing? What'd you do this weekend? Right now, topic of conversation in our office is flood. Did you bring a canoe to the office? How'd you get here? So we have very high satisfaction rates. And it's because of that first initial reaction. And you better believe how my front office interacts with the students is definitely going to trickle over to the advisor. They're going to the advisor generally happier than already being annoyed. So that's essentially where we start trickling down. So these do affect each other. Effectively answering my questions. They were wanted to help me explore ideas and discover resources. Left with an action plan of what I needed to do. That's huge. You can have advising appointments where the student feels this is a great appointment, I love the conversation, and then they leave and go, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. That was great, I loved it in there, but what do I do? So you need to have that follow through, the positive and supportive. That should be not have to be said, but it does. You may be having one of the worst days in your life. As Rita Pearson from the TED Talk says, you got to be an actor or an actress that day, because you need to separate yourself as best you can. And there's times where that's a little bit more difficult, right? I mean, everyone has stuff going on in their lives. Our students are people too. So when my wife was pregnant with both of my now daughters, I was very blunt with my students that, hey, my wife is due at any minute, so my phone could go off. I'm sorry. If it's her, I'm definitely going to take that. I'm going to have to get to the hospital. And they're people. What do you think their responses were? Oh my God, do you know, is it a girl or a boy? Oh, that's so exciting. Like, they're real. But if I didn't take that minute to do that and the phone just started ringing, can you imagine how annoyed they'd be? Especially during heavy advising season when it took 2 weeks to get that appointment. Just be honest with your students. They're people, they understand. And then of course the satisfaction of, are you happy with your advising? So we have very, very high satisfaction rates in our office with our advisors. So. Some words, we ask students to describe their advisor in 4 words. The bigger the word and the darker the green the word is, it's been used more times by students. So you can see the top 20 words here that I think students are happy with us. I think they like the experience they're getting with their advisor. And this is not just advising, it's my student workers. This is high school students and their families that come and meet with my graduate recruiter. This is students that are coming to meet with our assistant dean. And generally speaking, if you're meeting with the assistant dean, it's probably not for good reasons. But through Appreciative, still good things can come from that. Students generally, when they do leave, they still have good things to say. They have an action plan. You don't need to tell a student what they did wrong. They already know. But it's what do you do next?
So then did I hear you say that so much of these good data you're seeing here, the process starts with the frontline people?
It does.
Like you can get in there and start doing the work you need to do because they've been teed up in this system.
Yes.
So even the data looks like it's the advisor's data.
Yeah.
So much took into play to get
Oh,
them to that.
immensely, immensely. My last office, quite contrasting experience where I'm at now. We had 12 advisors. Each advisor had roughly 500 students. It was a much bigger institution. And our front desk, just not a happy person, I'll put it that way. And it was obvious. Students come back to their appointment with their advisor. If they had a good relationship with the advisor, the first 5-10 minutes of the meeting was complaining about that front desk woman. Like, why is she so angry today? Did I do something to upset her? And Matt, well, we got to spend some time. No, I'm so sorry. That shouldn't have, I mean, look how much time we're using. So of course that's going to, I was in a position where we weren't able to do this. I didn't have the ability to do all this stuff, but I imagine if we did this, we would not be getting the same numbers I'm getting in my office now. So it's definitely setting it from the beginning. And like I said, students don't differentiate. Are you a student or are you a university official? And it's the same thing, potato, potato. Vlogging. Okay, so some additional benefits. I mean, of course, I've been about how this is going to be helpful for your students. For those that do really truly embrace appreciative advising, you do see a trickle effect in your personal life. You're better able to articulate your strengths and abilities. You're much more focused. You have better relationships at home as well. And my wife has noticed it too. Every once in a while she'll go, "You're being appreciative with me right now, aren't you?" Yeah, I am, but that's not intentionally. That's just me. And so you're able to see things in a different light. It's kind of this idea: glass half empty, half full. And when you really truly embrace this, that you're just happier. You know, and appreciative advising is not just about sunshine and rainbows. It's not about just giving only good news. It's not. But it's how do you deliver that information? Can you deliver bad information or unfortunate information, but still help the student in a productive manner? So an example, we have some, all institutions do, but we have some really weird policies. So we have this last day at a class, second Friday of the semester. Student goes to our registrar's office, turns in the course permission slip. And our folks there could easily say, say it's the third Monday. They could say, "Oh, I'm sorry, the last day was Friday." That's it. But our registrar's folks, who are amazing people, not fully trained and appreciative, but they understand some of the concepts. I've had several of them go, "Oh, I'm sorry, the last day to add with that is actually this past Friday. But if you go to your college, they actually have another form that kind of supersedes that rule. So you could add a class at any point. So you might just want to go have a conversation with them." And that's true. We have this policy we like to splash all over campus. Last day to add is second Friday, but in reality, I have another form in my office to add after second Friday. And then that becomes a conversation. Now that is empowering the student to come, and it's going to require some extra steps. The student's going to have to come talk to me. I'm going to have a conversation with them. We have to talk with a faculty member. Is it too late? Can they catch up? So the way we can move in a positive direction, but it's kind of in the hands of the student versus the student just being told, "Nope." So it's going that extra mile. Okay, so I keep talking about appreciative, and I know not everyone here is familiar with it. So I'm going to very briefly go through kind of the 6 phases of appreciative advising. And I do know that it looks like it's in this very specific order, but in all reality, a lot of these phases do blend. And you'll jump around. That's pretty common. The only thing I will say is you will disarm every time. You can't go anywhere without disarming a student. And so what we're really focusing on today is the first 3, but I do want to go through them all very briefly. I will make my presentation available. So if I know some people, I see pens already going up, I'll make this available so you can have it. The disarm phase, I say, is basically just basic human decency. Smiling when you're seeing someone, being interested in them, caring about them, making them feel welcome in the environment, whether that be in person or online or on text. When I just messaged Emma there, I didn't just say, "Are you ready?" I said, "Hi, Emma, are you ready?" So you just go a few little types and characters. It didn't take me that long, but just going a few extra steps to show that you're excited about them. And we move into the discover phase, where you're starting to ask questions, starting to learn. Well, what are you trying to accomplish today? And they come, "Hey, I have to turn in this form." Instead of, "Okay, well, you need to go here, and this is the form, this unit." Well, okay, well, what's your goal today? Well, I'm curious why you're looking for that form. What are you trying to accomplish? Because higher ed is a confusing place, right? It's another language altogether, especially if you're from a marginalized population, you're first generation, you're military veteran. And there's just so many that this is so confusing. And in their perceptions, they're the only one, right? Everyone understands college except me. So I'm not going to ask questions. And so they may have heard from a friend that this is the form. Well, at least at my institution, one form in one college is completely pointless in another. And then either in this college, it's actually 2 forms. And so there's a lot of that happens. They get their information from peers, which sometimes good and most of the time not so good. And so taking a few moments to ask a couple questions instead of just taking it face value. In advising, I say the hardest thing to do is to answer the questions that are not being asked. And so you see this on a daily basis. You know the questions students ask you all the time. You know what those usually end up also including. And so taking the extra minute to touch on those areas to find out if it applies. And then the dream phase, and essentially that's kind of that bigger picture, but what's your ultimate end goal? What are you trying to do? What are you excited about? And then sometimes they might say, well, I'm here to do this. And you ask, well, okay, what are you trying to do? And then it doesn't match. Like, well, wait a second, why are you doing that when this is what you want to do? This doesn't really mesh here. And that's where you're going to go back and discover a little bit more. So you can see these, it's about all this stuff connecting. By the way, no one is going to share their dreams with you if you didn't take the appropriate amount of time to discover. For you to ask me about my dreams, I don't know who you are. Take a minute and talk to them. They're a person. They have. And then these next three phases, we won't get into much today, but I think it's still important to just see the full process. And then in the design phase, which this you definitely touch on a little bit, but this is about co-creating a plan of action. What do I need to do to accomplish steps? And the easiest thing is to fall into routine. Okay, well, you want to add, so you need to go to your college and you're going to get this form, and then you're going to go talk to the faculty instructors. Here are their office hours. You need to get their permission, and when you get that form, you need to bring it here. And then send it like that. What if that plan does not work for the student? You know, if they're an online student, well, I physically can't go to office hours because I'm taking classes through Ohio University, but I live in Arizona. I can't go to office hours. And so it's about this co-creation. So when maybe some of these things are prescriptive, right? That their university policies don't allow for a lot of flexibility, but it's as simple as, does that make sense? Is this something you think you'll be able to accomplish? Is Anna using just a few follow-ups to let them know it's okay to ask me some questions if there's concern? Hardest part, especially on phone, I get no facial reactions. You don't understand what's going on. Because how many have been on a customer service phone call? One, it takes forever to actually get to a human. And then when you do, they start rattling. And how many of you get frustrated? You know, you don't get any of that. When you're in person, if I rattle off a whole procedure and I see, okay, I know something didn't mesh well, or so you just got overwhelmed, what's going on? And so just taking that extra step to go a little bit further. And the deliver phase. This is where they're essentially following through on that plan. This is probably, in my opinion, what most people struggle with the most, because a lot of people like to fall into, well, that's the student going into the plan. I'm not there. That's them. I don't have to do anything. What about appropriate follow through or suggestions, or you give advice to students and you got that, I don't know. I don't think they're really going to follow through on that. I asked, but I'm still not sure. I'm concerned. How can you follow up? How can you help them set them up for success? And the don't settle, when they inevitably come back, which imagine you see a lot because it's pretty common in most institutions, that the being sent all over campus. It's like, oh, this is the second time I've seen you today. What's going on? Well, I went to that office, and then that office said I need this form over at this place, but they said I actually need to get that from you, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so it's about when they do come back, it's either one, okay, you hit some roadblocks. I'm glad you're back here with me. Maybe let's talk about the process a little bit more, and let me make some calls for you, so that way you don't have to, go take a shower before you go to class because all this running around campus to what you're doing. Or then maybe next time you see them, and hey, did that work out for you? Great, I'm happy to hear that. That's awesome. What are you doing here today? Just that little thing of, how many of you recognize student faces? You probably see them all the time, but you probably don't necessarily remember their name. But just even, you don't have to say their name, like, hey, how's it going? I saw you earlier this semester. How's the classes going? Just that little bit that, again, it's back to that feeling supported, that I'm a person, I'm not just a number. Just those little tiny words can make a big difference in students. So that's essentially the 6 phases of appreciative advising, but all of that is moot if you don't embrace this idea of an appreciative mindset. If you are fake one bit whatsoever with these, how's life today? How are you doing? What'd you do this weekend? They'll read right through that. Students are so good about reading through BS. They are. So this has got to be real. If you don't believe in it and you actually don't care, this is not going to work. You need to believe in this because they'll see right through it. So those are the 6 phases of appreciative advising. Like I said, we're just going to be focusing on those first 3. Any questions with those phases at all? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But so when you communicate via email, of course, we always start out, hi, so-and-so, whatever, blah, 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 really nice.
Yeah.
When it turns into a lengthy conversation, when is it appropriate to just respond as opposed to all the extra in there?
Yeah. I'm going to repeat just so our colleagues. So the question was about, when in an email you get these questions that inevitably lead to a lot, basically. I usually try to put it on the student. And so, of course, being appreciative, hey, how you doing? I'm happy to receive your email. You brought up some good questions. You asked a lot of really important questions, and I try to gauge it on my historical perspective with this, that I know this is probably going to generate more questions that I might offer the student. This is probably going to be a lot of email back and forth. Are you interested? Maybe we could just Skype or FaceTime real quick. That might get you your answers quicker, and because I just know that this is going to lead to a lot of questions. Or what I'll maybe do is offer them a little bit of information, offer some of their answers that I know are pretty straightforward. And then maybe there was a fourth and fifth question that is the what ifs. We get a lot of those, like, what if this isn't approved? Or what if I don't meet the deadline? And that's a lot of, well, if this, but that, or this. Then I might say, this is a really complicated kind of a question. It'd be better if we could maybe just talk over the phone, or if we could do a FaceTime, that sort of thing. And students are usually receptive to that. But I think it's about that, appropriate disarming greeting, maybe giving them some of the answers really right away. But I think in the end, they're going to appreciate it, rather than getting, especially after you talk to them, they're like, yeah, you weren't kidding. Now, if you would have emailed me that, I don't know, like, that would have been tough. And so I think it's a balance. Yeah, good question. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take a minute and let's do some disarming stuff here. Any parents in the room? Just a few. What's the first grade you're focusing on? Yeah, that's right. What did you do? Why don't I know about this? Why have you been failing all semester? Haven't you been trying? Haven't you been doing your homework? What is that going to do to the child? Yep. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to be as quiet as possible to get out of this conversation as quickly as I can so I can go play Xbox. Right? That's not a productive conversation. It's going to just get your frustrations, and you're going to provide a bigger distance between the two of you. They're not going to talk. Instead, well, maybe, hey, you had a Miss Smith's English class. That class is no joke. How'd you pull off an A? I thought only people at B+ is at best. How'd you do that? Well, what's that going to do? One, it's going to surprise them, right? Like, why aren't you talking about my F? You're talking about my A in that class? Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to brag. I'm going to brag a lot because I want to put off that conversation about the F. And then, how would it be maybe a better way to approach math? How would you, any ideas? What do we, exactly, what do we have to do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And he knows that. But if you come at it from the we concept, showing that you're on their side, you're on their team, you want to support them, and you want to help them succeed. Or maybe, I don't know how you pull off that. Is there something in there that you did differently than your friends, that maybe there's something we can apply that here? And going to learning styles. Maybe there's, English and math usually do not have similar types of learning, but is there a way we can bring in maybe literacy into mathematics? I think you're hearing that a lot more these days, more, especially on public radio, about literacy is everywhere, and you can use that in every subject area. Is there a way we can bring literacy into math and maybe make you better understand the concepts? Is it that it's all just numbers, and those numbers just do not mean anything to you? But let's put it in the context of maybe you're going to be doing a recipe in baking, and it's on fractions, and how you need two-thirds cups of sugar, and maybe that will be enough to break through to the child. About reframing and making it a team effort. That's a good way to disarm a student. There we go. So back to that who's your Cody concept, the prerequisite. You have to believe. If you don't believe in the goodness, if you don't think they can do it, it's not going to happen. And again, they'll see right through it. You have to believe they can. And this applies to our students too. You see student populations, and you know what they are. We know those marginalized students. They're at a disadvantage. The odds are stacked against them. If you have a emancipated foster youth, nationally that's a 3%, less than 3% graduation rate. Odds are stacked against them, but don't dismiss them. You can do this. You don't ignore the fact that the odds are stacked against them, but you stay in their corner. Be that someone they go to. And when they get to graduation day, you could be the one they're thinking about. And so it's that belief of possibility for them. Anyone have any idea how long it takes to make a first impression with the research? Forbes says, I've heard 3, I've heard 10, I've 11. You have next to no time to make a first impression. And then the technology, I think it's probably even worse. Yeah, they're making decisions pretty quickly. In fact, with technology, they've already made a first impression about you before you've even said hello. Web. What does your web presence say about who you are? If you haven't heard it, institutions of higher education are the worst managed websites in the world, by far. They're exceedingly large. There's several chefs in the kitchen. If you look at my institution, if you look at my website, College of Ed, and then you compare it to the College of Business, it's different institutions altogether. We don't even have the same colors on the website. You'd think that would be pretty simple. And so when you have students on an online environment and they're going to your web, typically in marketing, we say, it's 3 to 4 clicks. If you can't find what you're looking for after 3 to 4 clicks, most of the time your audience gives up. Well, we know that's happening in higher ed. If you want to get to my advising page, I've been working on this ever since I got there, that if you're going from the main Ohio University website, you have to know to click on academics, which gives you this massive list, and you have to click on undergraduate, and then from there you have to click on the colleges, and then you have to choose not the College of Ed, but the Patton College of Education. And then once you click on there, you have to go to undergraduate on the college website, which then gets you to the Office of Student Affairs, which for most students, that doesn't mean anything. And then once you're on there, then you'll see advising, which then gets you to my homepage. Good luck finding us. So I try to, under the radar as much as I can, use those URL shorteners. Marketing doesn't like that, but I need to get my students to my website, otherwise that's going to be a wasted website. So, but thinking about your web presence. Now, obviously, I cannot control a lot of that. I cannot make decisions about the university website. I have my area. I can influence my area, my college, and of course, our office website. But how can I make mine a disarming presence? And if you look at my advising website, it looks drastically different than the rest of my college's websites. If you go to my teacher education program, you're going to find a lot of info if you like reading. Lots and lots of text. No photos, no color, just text. You go to the advising page, what's the first thing you're going to see is a nice staff photo of us with our belief of what advising is in a nice, different, fun font and a color. It's a much more easier, eye-friendly website. And we're giving you the information that you need. No point in spouting off all the policies on there. Of course, whenever you do get to some of the code, you got to reiterate that. Little footnotes and stuff like that, but you don't need simple questions with thesis answers. Then this idea of the student view almost had to do with Emma, but she was good. I don't know if you noticed when we were FaceTiming, the sun creeped in just a little bit, but she went back. That was something I had battled with my Budweiser students in the factory. They would take their break and they'd be out on the factory floor, pull up, at the time it was Skype, and we'd be having a conversation. I can't hear a word they're saying because they're in the factory. Like, do you have like a break room or maybe your car we could have this conversation? And it's okay to point those things out. And it's quite interesting when you start doing some of these from residence hall rooms when you're doing FaceTime and Skype and pointing out those what would be awkward things like, hey, it sounds like your roommate's having a little bit of fun, but could you maybe close the door or go to your lounge or something so we can have this conversation? It's okay to do that in a polite manner. They understand. Might be embarrassed. Some won't. And then the happy tone. Whether it's on a phone or Skype, I can tell if you're happy or if you're having the worst day in your life. So smiling. Even if it's on a phone call, smile. Just that little act of smiling will change your whole way you interact with the student. And so if you're having that day where it's just like nonstop form, or administrative, and you get a phone call and, hello, it's the, right away, you just killed it right there. Instead of, hey, how's it going today? Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just going to change the dynamics of the conversation. And they're going to likely share more with you rather than, all right, this person's busy. They asked my question, but I'm in and out as quickly as I can. And they're going to miss some information because they didn't want to bother you. Another thing we do, and share this resource, is an syllabus. In here, it's this idea of establishing what advising is. Does anyone have an idea what the general idea of what an academic advisor is for a first-year student? Course scheduling. Yep. You're the person that schedules my classes. Yep. They most closely associate us with the equivalent of their high school guidance counselor, which in some instances is fantastic. For our majority, that's the person they went to have their college or their high school transcripts sent to college. And so you need to take a moment to redefine. And many of you probably work in offices that you say the name and it's, what do you do? What is this office? And so this syllabus is about breaking down all that information, getting rid of the soup, explaining names of offices that really don't make any understanding to anyone outside of higher ed. Oops. So in here, when I brought this up, for you all, there's this idea of a timeline. And so in there, we have suggestions for, we call milestones of first year, second year, third year, and then what you should be doing every semester. And so it's good to establish those things, but being, again, short and concise. We don't need theses here. Just a few little simple nuggets about what do you do, why do you use it, and what's some advice. And we've found a definite change in our student interactions with this. They're asking us different questions. We're not getting the repetitive questions that we get 5 million times. It's now like 5,000 times instead. But they're more taking ownership of their undergraduate experience, and they're having better utilize us. They can do more with us. We're not just there for scheduling classes, which in fact, my advisors can't schedule classes anyway. Only the students can schedule classes at my institution. In there, we talk about advising appointments. And so this is one way we found very beneficial with my students that are, family, working 2 jobs, don't fit in that 9 to 5, or maybe there are e-campus students taking courses all over the world, but through Ohio University. The idea of scheduling an appointment online. I believe you are all on Starfish, excuse me, but just making it in their world. So easy to create a way to schedule online appointments. Starfish does it, we're just getting Starfish. This is Calendly, it's a free service that integrates with Office Outlook Exchange as well as Office 365, but just an easy way for them to schedule an appointment 24/7. And students actually ask me, like, so I can schedule whenever. I'm like, schedule on break, when the university's closed, go for it. It's there. You won't get an appointment at that time, but it's there. And through here, you can actually customize the question. So I'm asking them, what type of appointment do you want? It's gonna be person, phone, Skype, FaceTime. I mean, we just list all the, I'm a believer of meeting the students where they are. So I offer Adobe Connect, I offer Zoom, I offer Skype, I offer FaceTime, whatever they know. I prefer to do what they know because it doesn't take that much time for me to learn it versus training several hundred on how to use the one I use. I'd rather just take the time to learn them all and let them pick. So immediacy behaviors. People are gonna generally gravitate towards people they like. It's pretty simple kind of concept. So if you're that one person at that office that is always so helpful and happy, that's the person I want to go to whenever I need something from that office. Well, wouldn't it be just a novel idea if everyone in that office was that way? That way, anyone in the office could serve students at all times. That's a big thing I train my advisors on. That in my office, we have advising rosters, but my advisors know all curriculum in our college. Because if I'm the only one that does family consumer sciences students, I don't want a family consumer science student to show up to my office today needing my help. Obviously not there. I wanted them to be able to get service from anyone in my office. And so Granted, there might be someone that's more of an expert, so I'm essentially the liaison with faculty for family consumer. So I may know a bit more information, but it's my job to relay that information to the rest of my team. And that gives ownership of people on your team. Maybe. And so some of this we talked about, but engaging in small talk. It's pretty simple to do that in person. So if you're greeting a student in the lobby and on the way back, you're, hey, did you go to that game last night? That was a real close one. You know, you have all this time to walk, right? And then you get to the office and then it's okay, business. You can still do that over the phone. Typically over the phone and FaceTime, Skype, I found those appointments are generally quicker because it's almost this idea, and I don't know who decided this, but I got to be more business. I got to be efficient, do this much faster. So it's a lot easier to actually incorporate some of that idea of small talk, getting to know them, because they're gonna be go, go, go. On occasion, I do get some, you know, I'll get a phone call and I hear a child in the back room screaming and, oh, I'm so sorry, they just woke up from a nap. Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, this is your 30 minutes. I can hang up, and if you want to give me a call back in 10 minutes, I'll still be here. And, you know, so even just that little bit. We didn't get a small talk at all, but I just became a person. I was understanding. And so it's so much easier to incorporate, but we just have this tendency to gravitate towards, what can I help you with today? You know, instead of saying your office name and then your name, how can I help you? Change that question. Hey, how's your day going today? Did you do anything interesting? I mean, it's so easy to change that, and it's going to catch them off guard, like, oh, well, but you got to be careful on the questions you ask. Because what's the default? Hey, how's it going? I'm good. And how many times I used to ask that question on my walk back to my office. I'd say, hey, how you doing today? Oh, I'm good. And we sit down. Okay, so here's the story. Wait, you just said you were good. What's going on? And so it's getting rid of those colloquial type of questions that are going to give you the same answer regardless if the building's on fire or not. So changing up how, or hey, did you do anything interesting today? Did you meet anyone fun? You know, you can easily change those questions into student life, and then just be aware of your campus, what's going around on your campus at that time. Easily to pull from that kind of stuff. Intro and handshake. How would you do that in a digital environment? Staff profiles. Do you have a photo of you on your website with your name? And if you do, it's probably, this is my hometown, this was my undergraduate major. You change that up and spice it up a little bit. Yeah, definitely name and hometown's good, but and on weekends, I'm part of the community soccer league, and we get together, change things up, make yourself interesting. You don't want to be okay, this is boring. Like, try to find things that's unique about you, bring your personal life into a little bit to your discretion, but find ways for students to find connections with you. You know, so for me, saying I was a first generation college student, we have a lot of first generation on my campus. That's a good thing for me to talk about. You know, I'm a first generation college student, and that's why I chose a career in academic advising. And here's some things I wish I would hear. That's immediately going to connect with the first gen quickly. And then whenever we get advisor change requests, because it happens, and we get students that come in and ask for a new advisor, no one individual is going to get along with everyone. It's just fact. No one's going to get along with everyone. So in order for me to approve any advisor change, I require that the students put down in writing, what are they looking for in an advisor? I don't want to know what necessarily didn't go well, because that's going to bring out a lot of negativity, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be constructive. I want to know, what are you looking for in a new advisor? That will tell me what the other advisor didn't provide to you, and then using that as a professional development opportunity. But what are you looking for? Well, we will usually encourage them to look at our staff profiles. And that's where they can see, hey, I saw this advisor does this, and then I do that too. I'm interested in learning more. The vocal variety. So that's my end at the intro. Keeping it going, keeping it interesting, not being a customer service auto recorded response system. Again, smiling. Don't stop that smiling. It makes a difference. You don't have to say anything, but if you smile, that will change everything. Nodding your head, even on the phone, it's gonna change the way you're gonna communicate. Using those body gestures, encouraging if you stand. You know, potentially some people are in that chair from the second they get there till lunch, and then the second, stand up. No one's gonna say anything if you stand. Like, I gotta stand for a second here. You know, just stand and talk on the phone. I do it sometimes. It'll change things up a little bit. Especially maybe if you get maybe a high-strung, worried student. If you've been sitting in that chair for 3 hours, you might wear on you. Just stand up. You're gonna think about things differently from standing. You have a different perspective. You might try to think about what's going on in their life a little bit more.
You also have to be a little bit more patient because on the phone, you're apt to be more rude. So you really have to bring them down like, hey, and totally disarm them before you pass them off to an advisor.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because sometimes it's something that nothing to do with what they want, but something that's drastic going on in their life. We had an example last week where Morgan was on call and this kid was so high strung. I knew he needed to talk to somebody. And I said, okay, let's chill. What's going on? There's something else we can help you with. And it turned out his sister was in the shooting in Parkland, but he had to get the lift off of his account, and he called downstairs, and they were like passing him to 16 places. So by the time he got to us, he already felt the education system stunk in the state. When he got to us, it was like, Joe wasn't there, he was away. And I just said, okay, hang on a second. I talked him down. I got up, I walked into Morgan and said, I'm transferring you the call. This is what's going on. So it's great if the front knows, but if they don't pass it to the back, that child student now has to redo it again. And it only makes it that the education system don't know what they want.
Exactly.
So that was a powerful moment in our office. We haven't shared it with Joe yet, but we all came together. And then the other counselors went in there to give Morgan that support because he wasn't hostile. He was sad. He was brokenhearted. He lost friends. He lost his coach. And that was a lot to do on it. And Morgan got him, and she was great with him. And then he came in, and it was just a fabulous team effort on behalf of our office.
That's
But it was
outstanding.
that simple question. There's something else going on here. It's not just about the whole sweetie. And I have a habit of calling them sweetie, but that kind of takes them down, and they know I'm old. Because that's the first thing they say. You're old. I said, my kids are like older than everybody in the office, but that's my icebreaker with them, and then they understand. Because I don't have their terminology. I found out 3 weeks ago from the office what woke means. But that's the humor in our office, and most of us don't have the lingo. We really don't. So we're at a true disadvantage, but they take great pleasure in being able to teach us. So they come in and they'll say, hey, Miss Camille, what new words you want to learn today? I don't know, whatever one you've got. It's great that sitting in the office like this, waiting for that 20 minutes to pass.
Thank you for sharing. That was great. It was a good story. So definitely. You can see how just one little thing can make a big difference. And it made a difference to that student, I'm sure.
It did.
To not have to repeat the story again.
That's the biggest complaint.
Yeah, definitely.
In person or on the phone, but on the phone, they're more hostile.
Definitely. Yeah, it's the idea of empathy and understanding. So definitely. Thank you. No, you're fine. Thank you. All right, so moving on into the discover phase a little bit.
Hello there. Hi.
Hi.
I'm here to thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Christine. Bonjour, Karine.
Bonjour.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm ATM. You know what ATM stands for?
Automated
teller machine?
That is correct, normally, but today you're wrong. I'm an automated thanking machine.
Hey, look at that, buddy.
That's for you. That's on TD Canada Trust.
Thank you.
Ooh, selfie. Get my good side. There's a slot that's opening.
Oh my goodness. Never in all my life had such a beautiful surprise.
Yeah, you've been helping your daughter out, is that correct?
Yes.
We've got something for you, Christine. There's something that's about to come out there. Those are 2 piggy banks. Those are for your kids. Well, we've got a little something for you because you're a famous customer. We know you love the Jays so much. Look on the other side of me. There's another slot. It's going to open up. On the left side there, yeah. It's going to open up.
That's awesome.
She's my only daughter. She has cancer and she had an operation on Tuesday.
We wanted to thank you in a very specialized way. There's actually a card coming out for you right there. And if you look inside each piggy bank, there's a check for $1,000 to start an RESP for each of your kids. Yes.
Yeah,
For that outfit. Well, the thanking's not done, Christine.
What?
Here's the thing. If you tell your kids, hey, here's an RESP, they'll be all, nah. But if you tell them you're taking them to a place like Disney,
No.
yes, you're taking your kids to a magical place in California, Christine.
I've never been able to take my kids anywhere. Oh.
It's wonderful that you've been with us for so long. That we got somebody who might want to talk to you for a second about that.
Oh my God.
During this time, we have come to know how giving, loving, and supportive you are, especially to your daughter in Trinidad. She's a lucky woman to be able to call you mom.
So I just threw you a ball, but Sunday you'll be throwing me a ball.
Oh my God.
You'll be throwing out the first pitch.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I got goosebumps right now.
Actually, Dorothy, could you lean in for a second? Because I have a secret to tell you. Just lean in very close. We want you to thank her yourself. So we've got something coming out of the slot right now. Something right there for you. And those are tickets. Those are tickets to Trinidad.
Are you serious?
I am serious. You're going to go see your daughter in Trinidad.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Dorothy.
It's a powerful one, isn't it? It's one of my favorite videos to show. In the last, we talked about 7 seconds or less for a first impression. We need to check that on ourselves too. Quickly, could you have made assumptions about each of those people based on just pure looks? Like the girl that could never have taken her kids to anywhere like Disney. Looking at her, she was very professional. She looked like she could have come from money. She doesn't. Or like, you know, the woman with her daughter with cancer. You never would have thought that. Or like my student who came to me last fall, who is an outstanding stellar student. I mean, special education, straight A. She's going to change lives easily. Once I got her in my office and we were chatting, she told me that she was raped last summer. You don't know what's going on in your students' lives. And so when your student is 5 minutes, 10 minutes late for an appointment, or if they're behind on a policy or a procedure, they're late a day, just don't default to well, that's the rule. Going further, going the extra step, asking those questions to find out what's going on. So everyone needs a helping hand. Everyone at some point needs a hand. You can be that helping hand. I mean, you easily can refer to somewhere else, or, I'm sorry, Joe's out. I could set you up an appointment for, Thursday when he gets back. What does that say to the student? I'm just a number. They don't care. That's what Discover's about, asking those questions. Now, obviously, you're not going to ask a question, some of these very serious and in-depth person, you're not going to ask those. But if you show the interest and you're asking questions that are maybe a bit different, maybe a different, odd, or wow, no one's ever asked me that, it could lead to that stuff. And we never want any of our students to be struggling with that. No more are the days where you can assume that college students can just stop their lives, have the money to just put 4 years on pause, go to school, that's top priority, don't have to work. It's just not the reality. Everyone's got something else going on in their life. And so that's what I'm hoping to take away from, Discover. To identify, look closer. It's this idea of what makes you tick. At orientation, one thing we did this past year, we scrapped our whole orientation plan. How many, probably some in this office, you don't have to raise hands, but what I see pretty nationally with orientation programming, that it's usually a 1, maybe 2, some institutions do 3 days, and inevitably at some point they're with their major, their college, and there's gonna be, a presentation for an hour and a half, and I'm gonna be that official up here telling you how vitally important this information is and you need to know. Off comes this floating head, in comes another floating head from a different office. This information is vitally important and you need to know it. And tell you a number of times I hear people talking about students don't remember anything in orientation. Well, it's just when you have half a dozen heads saying, this information is vitally important, you need to remember it, that's the message they get, that everything is vitally important information. It's not their fault they can't dictate word for word what was said over those 2 days, which is probably one of the most exciting experiences because they get to go to college. So it's hard to remember all that information. What do they remember from orientation? Well, what's the feelings? You remember how it felt to finally be on a college student or a college campus, be a college student. That's what they remember. And so what we did is we said, we're not doing a presentation. It's not going to do it. Our students come to my office or my college, and we roughly have 25 to 30. And then I have my advisors get up. An advisor will say their name, some interesting information about them. Past few years, we've had a lot of them talk about how they're a true Cleveland native, LeBron and everything. They love that. I'm not a Cleveland fan, but they are. And so then they'll say, all right, I need Jacob, Tiffany, John, Mark, you want to come with me? Those students are the advisee for that advisor. They're going to go off somewhere in the building. We're very, very lucky. We have a brand new building that was renovated and opened last January. It's a $32 million renovation. So we have a very beautiful building. We have a lot of very beautiful spaces. We don't have the palm trees to rely on, so you guys have an advantage. But then they take those 4 to 5 students going somewhere in our building. That's their favorite go-to in the building to just chill and relax. Why are you here? What are you excited about? What are your dreams? What are your goals? What are you afraid about? Those are actual questions we ask students, and it's an hour and a half session, just talking, building relationships between advisee and advisor. We have data on this after they leave to evaluate it. We had a roughly 88 to 90% satisfaction rate with our old orientation model. When we flipped to this model, we're at 99% satisfaction rate. And the number one open-ended comments, there were 2 kind of things as the top. Students were happy they met their actual advisor, and they were happy to find out someone else was scared about something. And in some cases, someone else was also scared about the same thing I'm scared about, and it's okay. So it's this idea of going deeper. We don't want to look students as a number. You hear that, you are a person. Well, usually it's well, you're an early childhood major. You gotta go deeper than that. Where are you from? You have a name. What makes you tick? This early childhood major is different from this one, from this one, from this one. We need to know students on a deeper, more meaningful level. That's what Discover is about. Getting being authentic. You can't be the one just getting all this information. So, where appropriate, sharing some of your story, but being appropriate about it. So if you actually had some hardships along the similar sort of milestones, share that. Or if you don't, then maybe articulating, I could understand maybe where you're coming from. Thank you for sharing that with me. That was really enlightening. I didn't think about it. Showing an awareness piece that I didn't think about it like that. But being sincere, this all goes back to that disarm. If you're not disarming, this is not going to happen. So being sincere about all this. So GroupMe, I know we talked about that a little bit. Here's a way where I'm able to break down some of those barriers. Students are willing to share a lot in text message, right? Get that computer screen, that monitor, that separation, they can share a lot in there. And I have one I've been going back and forth with the whole time I've been here about something she didn't tell me in her advising appointment on Thursday, but put her on GroupMe, it's a waterfall. There's just all this other stuff coming out. I'm like, Thursday I got a time, we're gonna talk, and I'm still talking to her while I'm here. GroupMe is a free service. There's no limit on how many people can be in it. With GroupMe, what I really like about it, no one has access to your cell phone number or your email through it, so it's completely anonymous. You do create a profile. It's got your name and photo, but that's about all they see. You can create a group if you want, or you can do one-on-one. And so I have an Advising with Ben group, and that group has a link. And at the beginning of every semester, I send a welcome back message to my students, and I provide that link for those that don't know about it, and they can join in the conversation. Of course, in that email, I'm talking about FERPA and all that good stuff. You don't have to worry about the financial implications of this, just because when they sign up for an account, GroupMe takes care of the standard texting rate fees, blah, 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 blah. It takes care of that. But in the group, students can ask a question to the whole group. So I think I have roughly 160 advisees in my role, and I think I probably have 60 or 70 in my advising group. So just realize not all students are going to use this, but it's valuable for some. And so I'll get a student, they'll say, hey, what's the GPA requirement for the sophomore year? I can't remember. And what I've found, that I thought this would be an easy way for me to get out those emails that we get 5 million times, an easy way to answer them. It's in texting format, in texting environment, so it's okay to reply in a texting environment because that's what it is. And it did. It cut down on some of those emails that we get, but the unexpected, it was creating community. Because before I could get a chance to get on there and reply, I was having my juniors and seniors chiming in and replying. And so now they're starting to make connections, especially in some of those majors where we only have 10, 20, 30 students in the whole major. They'd say, oh, you're doing that? I'm doing that too. Can we meet up for coffee somewhere? And then of course, as being a responsible advisor, whenever a student does share answers, I'm chiming in and saying, hey, Tiffany, thanks for answering. That's exactly right. That way the students are getting confirmation from me that that is accurate information, because we talk about peer sometimes go all over the place. But I do get situations like the student I've been going back and forth with. She's in my advising group, but stuff that she's been sharing with me over the weekend is not something she'd want to put in the group. But she went into our group, was able to click on me, and then send me a direct. So her and I are having a one-on-one text message. Again, without my cell phone number being on there. You can access this from a website, a tablet, a smartphone. You can turn off the sound notification. Now, with the latest, iPhones, that I can set that do not disturb feature because I really don't want to be getting these at 2 o'clock in the morning. But if your phone doesn't have that capability, this app has that. So you could actually mute it so you don't get the notifications in the middle of the night when they usually send those questions. So it's been a really service, and I strongly encourage. Okay, so for Discover, there we go. Okay. All right, so now I want to do a little bit of pair share activity. So turn to a partner next to you, and I want you to think about some Discover questions. If you need help, I'm giving you 2 to start with. And these are actual questions I have asked students. So we're going to take a few minutes to pick one of these 2, or come up with one on your own. I'll kind of partway through, any teachers, I'm going to raise my hand. Everyone, great. One, raise your hand. That'll be the indication to switch sides. So someone's giving me the question, one's giving me the answer, and then we'll switch. Make sense? Okay, everyone go for it. There, yeah. Okay. Okay. Very good. You doing okay? I just got this pop. Do I just ignore it? Choose one of the audio conference options. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm one of the managers. Oh, awesome. Great. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, I hope to keep working with you. Yeah. Just close it. Okay. There we go. So, encourage you to think about this on social media. Social media, I think, is an area where people struggle with, if like an office social media account, how do we have a presence? Social media is about community engagement. That's the biggest struggle with institutions going onto social media, that we're going to go on and we're going to put out this important information, which, by the way, we emailed about. It's a little redundant. It's kind of this idea, well, why aren't people following it? We put it on social media. Social media is an environment to go and engage in ideas with others. For-profit sector, they're quite successful on social media for two reasons. One, people know that if you tweet at a company, an organization, specifically airlines, you're likely to get a reply, because that's for public to view. This is not just calling 1-800 customer service. They're on the spotlight, they're going to respond. And two, companies might offer some sort of program or challenge, or they have something you get from it, this gift card or this a free product. So it's a challenge in higher ed. And I oftenly hear, well, our reward is the information and knowledge for its own sake. Try to sell that to a student. And so how are we going to sell ourselves in social media? It's the community engagement piece. So if all you put out is policies, deadlines, information, watch your followers go lower and lower and lower, because you're just a billboard. Social media is about engagement. If you're just sending one-way communication, that's not the purpose, and it's going to fail. And so it's not that difficult to put out a question like this on social media. See the questions you get from your students. It's really cool. It's empowering. And it's where you can learn things about students that you didn't otherwise know. It's a great opportunity to think about putting this stuff out there. Actually put that Rita Pearson video out there. We got a lot of responses. Now it works that I'm in the College of Education, but at Rita Pearson, every kid needs a champion. Find things that your students relate to and put it out there. Here's some other questions that I try to maybe apply to some of your areas. Do you know about the process? Instead of, I'm here to do this. Okay, here. So, well, do you know about the full process? Do you know what the next steps are? Or, you know, when students commonly come to see me about this, it usually also involves this. I don't know if anyone's explained that to you. And even if it's maybe outside of your office, maybe you know that I'm a cog in the process, a cog in the wheel, but I know it's going to also require you to go here and here. And oh, by the way, that usually affects your financial aid. You might want to look into that. Giving them a heads up. You're not giving them hard and concrete information. You're just saying, hey, I've heard, I know some students have said this. You might want to look into it just to be safe. Now, you as an office could be doing some of that inner working ahead of time to know what processes affect other offices. And it's not from the stance of training other offices to relay your information, but more of an awareness. So you know what offices are involved in the process. One example is we had a withdrawal process. A student wanted to withdraw from the university. They would come to their college and we would sign off on a form. One thing we didn't realize, that the instant you withdraw from a university, you literally have 24 hours to vacate university housing. And so that was causing problems. Students would come to our office and they'd say, I just got kicked out. My parents aren't going to be here till Saturday because they can't get off work. What am I supposed to do for the next 2 days? Meanwhile, all my stuff's just sitting in the lobby. What do I do? One, I need to have conversation with housing. I was not very appreciative to do that. But if that's their process, I can't change that. It's not within my scope. But me being an advisor, I know, well, if we drop you today versus drop you Friday, it's not going to make any financial change whatsoever. Let's just wait and do that Friday. Granted, you're withdrawing, so no, you don't have to go to classes if that's your true intent. But that would buy them a couple more days. That way they don't have to figure out where they're supposed to go, essentially being homeless. Or if they're a freshman, okay, now you have to befriend an upperclassman, because on our campus, your freshmen, sophomores have to live on campus. So I know you're from a small town, you haven't met very, we got to find a junior now or a senior that's willing to let you come in. For some, that's easy. For some, that's not. All right, so I want to take, I was having issues with this on the way here, so let me double check and see if it's working.
After interviewing tens of thousands of people about their work, everyone from housekeepers to salespeople to teachers to generals, all different kinds of people, all good at their job. The biggest, most enduring discovery that I've come to, at least, and there's a lot of different discoveries, but the most enduring discovery is that work, I mean, the experience of working can be great. It can thrill you, and it can challenge you, and it can restore you. It can make you feel powerful, strong. I mean, not every day, right? I mean, there's days when you come in and it's like everyone's just taking an I want to annoy Marcus pill, or days when you come in it's just boring. But there are other moments at work, aren't there? There are other moments where you get to feel like you're really using your strengths. Where you get in that zone where the right decisions just come so easily to you. Or when you feel creative without really trying, and you just got one idea after another. Where you feel challenged in just the way that you like to be challenged. Or moments when you dive into something and you get so involved in it, so focused on it, that when you're done with it, you're not tired. In fact, you're kind of fulfilled, and you almost wish that the activity that you were doing, well, your whole job was that activity. Moments like that, work can be great just because it can show you how great you can be. And your company knows this. I mean, that's why they're forever talking about our people are our greatest asset. They know that if you, and everybody else, but if you can find a role in which you can play to your strengths most of the time, then everybody wins. You win because you feel more productive, more engaged. Your teammates win because they feel the difference. Your customers feel the difference. The company sees the difference. Everybody wins. So wouldn't it be great? I mean, wouldn't it be great if you got to play to your strengths most of the time? If you could find a role where you play to your strengths for most of your working day. I mean, how cool would that be? Well, it'd be cool, but the research shows that actually very few of us manage to get to that place. In fact, if you ask this exact question, if you ask, what percentage of your typical workday do you spend playing to your strengths? If you actually ask people that question, what you get back is that less than 2 out of 10 of us, actually get to play to our strengths at work. I'm not an idealist. I don't know about you, but I didn't expect that number to be 80%. I didn't expect 8 out of 10 people to say, yeah, we skip to work. We play to our strengths most of the time. I mean, there's a reason they call it work, right? But 2 out of 10, actually less than 2 out of 10, it's actually 17%. That just seemed really low to me. And I suppose, well, for me anyway, that begs a question. And that question is, are you one of the 2 out of 10? And if you aren't, how do you get to be? Now, it wasn't always this way, was it? I mean, it wasn't always this way. When you were a kid, I mean, if you think back to when you were a kid, didn't you on some level kind of know instinctively what got you out of bed every day? You knew what classes you wanted to go to, or what teachers you wanted to hang out with, or what kids you wanted to go play with. You just knew instinctively what your strengths were, what strengthened you, and you kind of felt, maybe you couldn't articulate it, but you kind of felt that the world was going to wait for you, and one day you were going to pop out and your unique mark was going to be made on the world. And then sometime between then and now, some part of that childish hopefulness evaporates, doesn't it? It withers away, and we get to work and we're not really sure what our mark is anymore. Now, there's all kinds of reasons why that happens, why I think we lose touch with what our strengths are and what our contribution should be. We gotta fit in, we gotta do what our parents want us to do, we gotta get a job, we gotta pay the bills. And then you get the job, and then you gotta do what your boss wants, and then here's your job description, and we gotta do what the company wants. So, yeah, maybe some of those things are to blame for getting you off your strengths path. But I think if you look closely, you might find that what's holding you back from really playing to your strengths isn't this other stuff, your boss, your company, your job description. Maybe what's holding you back from playing to your strengths is what you believe. Maybe you've become trapped by a very few myths that you've been told are true, and they're not. If you could explode those myths, and if you could replace them with what's true and really act on it, then maybe you could take back some of the control of your work. And maybe you could spend more time, deliberately, each week, spend more time playing to your strengths. Here's one of those myths, that as you grow, you change. God, we've all heard that one, right? As you grow, you're supposed to put away your childish traits. You're supposed to acquire more skills and acquire more experiences and become more balanced, more well-rounded. You're supposed to become an adult. But the problem is, it isn't true. The truth is, as you grow, you don't change your personality. As you grow, you become more and more and more of who you already are. My son, Jackson, Jack's 4.5 years old, and already I know some stuff about him. I can see that Jack physically hates to lose. Not in a I prefer winning to losing kind of way that all kids have, but in a physical hatred of losing. If he sees his favorite football team on TV losing, he almost, well, not almost, he can't stay in the room. He's got to run out. Or he's got to bury his head in the cushions and like pretend that he can't see it, so that he can't see it. I mean, the kid just hates to lose. I've also seen, and this is odd, but because I don't have any of this, he has a craving for order. This is the kid that won't close the fridge door unless the ketchup has been turned so the label's facing out. Or who panics when we're on the plane and I lean forward to close the blind of the window that might, just might, partially belong to the seat in front of me. Oh, don't do that, Dad, that's his. Well, odd though that is, those personality traits in a 4.5-year-old, and kind of funny, the bottom line for Jack is they ain't gonna change. He's gonna have that same craving to win at 44 as he does at 4. And at 84, when he sees his grandkids with their playthings littered all over the playroom floor, his need for structure is still gonna fire off. So the point of life for Jack isn't to replace that, the point is to channel it. His dreams may change, his circumstances may change, his achievements may change, but the core of him, the strongest and most dominant parts of his personality, those are going to stay the same. Those are going to stay constant, and so will yours, and that's okay.
I show you that video more for you to think about your strengths. And the way Marcus defines strengths is something that you're good at. It's something that you're good at that powers you. And so an example is that I can be very organized. It's not something I like doing. It's not something I naturally tend to. It's an effort for me to do it, but I can do it. I don't classify that as a strength. And I want to be one of those people that plays my strengths in my day. And so when I think about, my advising interactions, that I wanted to spend more time on the relationship piece. I wanted to spend more time relationship building. But what I found is they spend all this time just asking me all that policy and art, and I want to answer that for them. I want to do that. But my advising points, they just became so business oriented. Well, it wasn't until I reference change and point blank explained to them, I'm a resource for you. I want to be that person for you. Yes, I'm here for all your academic needs, but if there's something on campus you're unsure about, if you have a need that doesn't relate to academics, still come to me. I may not be the expert, I may not know the answer, but you better bet I know the person on campus that does. And that's when it started changing relationships. They started spending more time. I was able to play to my strengths more as, I'm a maximizer is one of my strengths quest finders, that I'm able to help create a fuller life picture for students in their college experience. Just thinking about that, and how can you shift your population to start thinking that way? We're going into dream here. So this is where we're, again, connecting discover and dream. So all that information that was just shared with discover, and then what are they here to do? those don't match up. That's a problem. Wait a second. You told me that you want to go to medical school. You told me that you've been researching for a while, you plan on doing it, but over here you're telling me that you don't like the sight of blood, you struggle in science classes. What's the connection here? Dad's a doctor, and dad won't pay for your tuition unless you go to medical school. Now I get it. Okay, let's go back. We got to go back and start discovering. And maybe there is true interest. You know, I get that a lot. Well, what if they actually are interested in the medical field, but they just aren't? Well, there are some realities. You're not getting into medical school with a 2.0 GPA. It's just not going to happen. But what is it about the medical field that interests you? And are there career options for you? Because there probably are. You know, students are only aware of when they're saying what college and what they're going to major in high school. It's, you know, teaching, engineering, medical school, lawyer. I mean, it's the ones that have been around for decades and decades. But the amount of jobs that are out there nowadays, heck, it's a lot like our name of the job, and what does that do? Students have no clue. In a 2010 Census Bureau report, the top 5 out of the top 10 jobs that year did not exist 4 years prior. Meaning, when those students started college, when they graduated, there were careers that didn't exist. It's about the idea that there's more than one right way to get to their end goal. It's not just this linear one-size-fits-all path. It's this idea that when they do struggle, we're reframing from this concept of plan B. What does a plan B say? It didn't go right. You're negating it. Oh, you struggled, you're not good enough. Well, what's your backup plan? We want to be talking in terms of parallel plans. Okay, that didn't go so well. Well, tell me, how do you think you can get there? Shifting the conversation. Again, they're making all the decisions. You're not making any decisions for students, but it's about showing them how can they still be one of those 2 out of 10 that places their strengths and gets to where they want to go. Some example dream questions, and I legitimately have used these with students. You're 8 years old. What did you want to be when you grew up? It's funny. Why am I advisor asking me this? Sometimes they actually do relate. If you ask my wife what she wanted to be when she grew up when she was 5 years old, she said a dentist. She's a dentist today. It's one of those rarities. You don't see those that often. Usually it's these make-believe professions that really don't exist. And I want to be a space rocket cowboy, and then they ended up being a pilot. Okay, we got a commonality here. That makes sense. You wanted to fly, but it's about helping them get along in their journey. Like, well, what excited about that job then, and that helps illustrate a path. So it's a better way of getting to some of those deep questions, but asking in a light, humored way. You can still get to their goals. UCF, right around the corner. This is a dream wall that they have. Where students feel free, you can go up and put up dreams. And I think this is one where one of them said they wanted to marry Justin Bieber. I think that might be up here somewhere. They started doing it. South Dakota State started doing it. This is with their orientation. So at orientation, they ask all the students, come up, write a dream, put it on this board. And then simultaneously on another wall, I haven't been there, so they described it, but on another wall, they have another dream wall, but that one's for the parents. And they write their dream. And what they do is they collect all these and they transcribe these, and 4 years later at the graduation ceremony, up in their ticker at their stadium, these are going across the bottom, all the dreams of this year's graduating class. It's really cool that they put this into action. And I believe here on campus, the advising center, they have a dream board as well. This idea is taking off, and students are absolutely loving it. You're thinking that it's something weird, students won't do it, but they'll do it. I mean, think about whenever you're in a waiting room, you'll read just about anything, won't you? Like, oh, this is a magazine I have absolutely no interest in, but I'm gonna read it. Like, you'll do anything in a waiting room. This type of stuff, that's fun. It makes you think, oh, this office actually cares. That's pretty cool.
There's so many of you. When I was a kid, I hid my heart under the bed because my mother said, if you're not careful, someday someone's gonna break it. Take it from me, under the bed is not a good hiding spot. I know because I've been shot down so many times, I get altitude sickness just from standing up for myself. But that's what we were told. Stand up for yourself. And that's hard to do if you don't know who you are. We were expected to define ourselves at such an early age. And if we didn't do it, others did it for us. Geek, fatty, slut, fag. And at the same time we were being told what we were being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always thought that was an unfair question. It presupposes that we can't be what we already are. We were kids. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a man. I wanted a registered retirement savings plan that would keep me in candy long enough to make old age sweet. When I was a kid, I wanted to shave. Now, not so much. When I was 8, I wanted to be a marine biologist. When I was 9, I saw the movie Jaws and thought to myself, no thank you. When I was 10, I was told that my parents left because they didn't want me. When I was 11, I wanted to be left alone. When I was 12, I wanted to die. When I was 13, I wanted to kill a kid. When I was 14, I was asked to seriously consider a career path. I said, I'd like to be a writer. And they said, choose something realistic. So I said, professional wrestler. And they said, don't be stupid. See, they asked me what I wanted to be, then told me what not to be. And I wasn't the only one. We were being told that we somehow must become what we are not, sacrificing what we are to inherit the masquerade of what we will be. I was being told to accept the identity that others will give me. And I wonder what made my dreams so easy to dismiss. Granted, my dreams are shy because they're Canadian. My dreams are self-conscious and overly apologetic. They're standing alone at the high school dance and they've never been kissed. See, my dreams got called names too. Silly, foolish, impossible. But I kept dreaming. I was going to be a wrestler. I had it all figured out. I was going to be the garbage man. My finishing move was going to be the trash compactor. My saying was going to be, I'm taking out the trash. And then this guy, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, stole my entire shtick. I was crushed, as if by a trash compactor. I thought to myself, what now? Where do I turn? Poetry. Like a boomerang, the thing I loved came back to me. One of the first lines of poetry I can remember writing was in response to a world that demanded I hate myself. From age 15 to 18, I hated myself for becoming the thing that I loathed, a bully. When I was 19, I wrote, I will love myself despite the ease with which I lean toward the opposite. Standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean embracing violence. When I was a kid, I traded in homework assignments for friendship, then gave each friend a late slip for never showing up on time, and in most cases, not at all. I gave myself a hall pass to get through each broken promise. And I remember this plan born out of frustration from a kid who kept calling me Yogi, then pointed to my tummy and said, too many picnic baskets. Turns out it's not that hard to trick someone. And one day before class, I said, yeah, you can copy my homework. And I gave him all the wrong answers that I'd written down the night before. He got his paper back expecting a near-perfect score and couldn't believe it when he looked across the room at me and held up a 0. I knew I didn't have to hold up my paper of 28 out of 30, but my satisfaction was complete when he looked at me puzzled, and I thought to myself, smarter than the average bear, motherfucker. This is who I am. This is how I stand up for myself. When I was a kid, I used to think that pork chops and karate chops were the same thing. I thought they were both pork chops. And because my grandmother thought it was cute and because they were my favorite, she let me keep doing it. Not really a big deal. One day, before I realized fat kids are not designed to climb trees, I fell out of a tree and bruised the right side of my body. I didn't want to tell my grandmother about it because I was scared I'd get in trouble for playing somewhere I shouldn't have been. A few days later, the gym teacher noticed the bruise and I got sent to the principal's office. From there, I was sent to another small room with a really nice lady who asked me all kinds of questions about my life at home. I saw no reason to lie. As far as I was concerned, life was pretty good. I told her whenever I'm sad, my grandmother gives me karate chops. This led to a full-scale investigation, and I was removed from the house for 3 days, until they finally decided to ask how I got the bruises. News of this silly little story quickly spread through the school, and I earned my first nickname, Pork Chop. To this day, I hate pork chops. I'm not the only kid who grew up this way, surrounded by people who used to say that rhyme about sticks and stones, as if broken bones hurt more than the names we got called, and we got called them all. So we grew up believing no one would ever fall in love with us, that we'd be lonely forever, that we'd never meet someone to make us feel like the sun was something they built for us in their tool shed. So broken heartstrings bled the blues, and we tried to empty ourselves so we'd feel nothing. Don't tell me that hurts less than a broken bone. That an ingrown life is something surgeons can cut away, that there's no way for it to metastasize. It does. She was 8 years old, our first day of grade 3, when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were a battleground. We found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse. Outside, we'd have to rehearse running away or learn to stay still like statues, giving no clues that we were there. In grade 5, they taped a sign to the front of her desk that read, "Beware of dog." To this day, despite a loving husband, she doesn't think she's beautiful because of a birthmark that takes up less than half her face. Kids used to say she looks like a wrong answer that someone tried to erase but couldn't quite get the job done. And they'll never understand that she's raising 2 kids whose definition of beauty begins with the word mom. Because they see her heart before they see her skin, because they've never always been amazing. He was a broken branch grafted onto a different family tree. Adopted, not because his parents opted for a different destiny. He was 3 when it became a mixed drink of 1 part left alone and 2 parts tragedy. Started therapy in 8th grade. Had a personality made up of tests and pills. Lived like the uphills were mountains and the downhills were cliffs. 4/5 suicidal, a tidal wave of antidepressants, and an adolescent being called pauper. 1 part because of the pills, 99 parts because of the cruelty. He tried to kill himself in grade 10 when a kid who could still go home to mom and dad had the audacity to tell him, "Get over it." As if depression is something that could be remedied by any of the contents found in a first aid kit. To this day, he has a stick of TNT lit from both ends, could describe to in detail the way the sky bends in a moment before it's about to fall. And despite an army of friends who all call him an inspiration, he remains a conversation piece between people who can't understand. Sometimes being drug-free has less to do with addiction and more to do with sanity. We weren't the only kids who grew up this way. To this day, kids are still being called names. The classics were, "Hey stupid," "Hey spaz." Seems like every school has an arsenal of names getting updated every year. And if a kid breaks into school and no one around chooses to hear it, they make a sound. They're just background noise from a soundtrack stuck on repeat when people say things like, "Kids can be cruel." Every school was a big top circus tent. And the pecking order went from acrobats to lion tamers, from clowns to carnies, all of these miles ahead of who we were. We were freaks. Lobster claw boys and bearded ladies. Oddities, juggling depression and loneliness, playing solitaire, spin the bottle, trying to kiss the wounded parts of ourselves and heal. But at night, while the others slept, we kept walking the tightrope. It was practice, and yes, some of us fell. But I want to tell them that all of this is just debris left over when we finally decide to smash all the things we thought we used to be And if you can't see anything beautiful about yourself, get a better mirror, look a little closer, stare a little longer, because there's something inside you that made you keep trying despite everyone who told you to quit. You built a cast around your broken heart and signed it yourself. You signed it, they were wrong. Because maybe you didn't belong to a group or a clique. Maybe they decided to pick you last for basketball or everything. Maybe you used to bring bruises and broken teeth to show and tell but never told. Because how can you hold your ground if everyone around you wants to bury you beneath it? You have to believe that they were wrong. They have to be wrong. Why else would we still be here? We grew up learning to cheer on the underdog because we see ourselves in them. We stem from a root planted in the belief that we are not what we were called. We are not abandoned cars stalled out and sitting empty on some highway. And if in some way we are, don't worry, we only got out to walk and get gas. We are graduating members from the class of we made it, not the faded echoes of voices crying out names will never hurt me. Of course, they did. But our lives will only ever always continue to be a balancing act that has less to do with pain and more to do with beauty.
I show this video just because it's sad, but he's not the only one that grew up that way. This is still a reality. It's not something that happened in high school and is gone when you get to college. This is where students are coming to us. And so I close out essentially the three phases with this concept that if that's their norm, if that's what they're going through in high school, what do you think they're doing with their dreams? They're trained to keep that inside, put up a defense wall around it. And so you can't start with this dream phase with students. You can't start with, all right, what are you trying to do today? You have to invest the time on all three of these, and it's vitally critical because you're going to get a true sense. And I realize there's definitely some challenges, especially if you're in an office environment and there's plenty of people around. Some of that's not going to be shared. But showing a good faith effort that you care and you want to help them, that's where they're going to start to break down those walls. And so for those that are connected with orientation leaders or with academic advisors, it's starting that process before they're getting to those individuals, or working with faculty. It's a team effort. This cannot be done by just one individual. And so I want you to think about this student, think about your Cody, but think about those people, about how are you going to do this? And I hope you see the value in it. So I present appreciative advising as the foundation for what it's going to be today. So with technology, usually what I find is there's the conception that I'm going to go to this technology presentation and they're going to package everything nice and neatly with a how-to guide, and here's how I need to do everything. And that's great. Sometimes it works if the circumstances are exactly the same. Otherwise, what I've commonly found is when you see presentations like that, you're going to get people absolutely love it and people absolutely hate it. I approach it from a methodological standpoint. This is where you need to operate from a base. Having this understanding and then understand how can you portray this in a digital mindset, whether it be through social media, through Skype. There's a number of different ways you can do this. I didn't on purpose do a how-to video today on how to do Twitter, how to do Instagram. I do have several slides, which I have in here, and I kept them in here because I'm planning on giving you this presentation. You all can easily read through all that. It's going to give you all the comparisons of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's going to compare that all for you, so you can definitely go through and read that. But you don't need me to come in and do that. Fortunately, there's this great invention, YouTube, and you can find 13-year-olds from across the country telling you how to use Twitter and how to use Instagram. That's not what you necessarily needed from me, is how to use that, but it's how to use it in a professional setting in higher education. And so that's why I use appreciative advising as that foundation to create a successful effort in higher education in the digital environment. As I said, so many entities viewed as a billboard idea. We put out the information, that should be good enough, because the information for its own sake is priceless. Not so much, not in their world. So I'm going to skip over, because in terms of this presentation, this next part will go into the social media aspect. I'm going to skip over that for now, so you can definitely go back and read this. So this is where I want to pick up. So everything before this is a lot more how-tos, screenshots, how to incorporate analytics. There's a lot of ways within the platform so you can do analytics. And then there's actually hidden websites that usually most people have no clue exist. So you can get analytics on your social media. We've got to go into text messaging a little bit. So there's a lot of different options. But here I want to talk about privacy considerations. This is if you're exploring more so social media than anything, but I would also still think about text messaging. Check with your legal departments. I've been in a few different institutions in a variety of different capacities. I found each legal department operates slightly different. And so for my institution, if I have a presence in social media, whether it be me personally, so I have an advisor.ben Instagram, which has my university email, it's my Instagram, but it's for advising purposes. But we also have a PCOE advising, which is the office. Our legal says if we're following students on any platform and we see anything, we have an expectation to act as an arm of the state. That's the only rule that exists for social media. You won't find a lot of legal out there on higher ed and social media, just because it is such a new concept. But honestly, HR departments and legal departments are scared about this concept right now. They really don't know how to handle it. Because you're going to get a lot of questions like, okay, so I understand you have a Twitter account and you're putting out information, that's good, but so you're liking students posting in the community? What does that mean? Are you endorsing something? Like, there's going to be a lot of confusion, right? And so from I added to this that being arm of the state,
Can you type it?
If you see anything religiously affiliated, anything politically affiliated, you leave those alone. Do not retweet, do not like, because it'll come across as a form of endorsement or that's not what we want to do. That's not what we want to do. We don't want to be getting into that. We want to be about engaging with our students. And so maybe some more appropriate things is a student on Instagram posting about a job that they just got. By all means, how can that be misconstrued in terms of job? But celebrate them. Congratulations, that's so exciting. I'm happy to hear about that. No one's going to think negative about that. Just be selective about it. Sorry about that. New mic change. Okay. With text messaging, I do got a lot of questions about FERPA and financial. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't ever add anyone to my GroupMe. I give them a link to join, and I'm being very obvious when I'm sending this information. This is a group text message. Anything you share in here will be accessible by the group. Now, I never put student information in those group messages. A student may, even if they send me a direct message, they send me a direct message about their grades in classes, I'll be happy to explain procedure in there, but I'm never going to talk about their record in there. That just makes me too nervous to do. So usually I'll kind of refer that to, we should talk about this over email or in person or a Skype or something like that. I just don't want to get caught up in that. So, and like I said, the financial part, GroupMe takes care of that. So you don't have to worry about it. Anyone familiar with Moore's Law? Anyone heard of Moore's Law? It's a computer processing term from the 1970s. What's interesting about this processing law, it's held true till today and can be extrapolated a bit further into technology as a whole. but essentially what's saying processing speeds for computer processors will double every 2 years. I think we see that generally with, with iPhone. That storage just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If you went 10 years ago, it was like 256 megabytes on an iPhone. So that's true of technology. And so that's another big reason why I did not get into a whole lot of how-to with technology, because there's a good chance if I were to do that, what I'd be talking about today would be old technology 2 years from now, and it had been a waste. But that methodology piece, that has held true. And so keeping that kind of mindset. Social media can be a great opportunity to get insights in your students that otherwise would go unknown. And so I want to give an example of what I mean by this. So I want you to meet Jamie. Jamie, one of our students at Ohio University, obviously on the volleyball team. She is one of the co-captains this year. She's a senior player, slated to be the MAC Player of the Year. I mean, she was by far one of the best players in the league. Here's a photo she posted on Instagram where she was being recognized for the Ultimate Elite Athlete Award. It's a very, very hard award to get at Ohio University. And it's not dependent on sport or gender. You can see how few people have actually gotten this award, so it's all sports. And it's basically being the best athlete that you can. It's challenging yourself to go above and beyond, and it's quite difficult to get. And what you might not be able to read here is down here later on this post, she's talking about a game that week. So the same week she got this award, she was at a game going up to spike the ball, and she describes it as the 8,000th time that she's done that particular move. At that time, ACL didn't agree with her. She came down, tore her ACL. This was Jamie a few weeks later in the hospital after her ACL surgery. She was fortunately able enough to redshirt because this was one of the first games of the year. But they were one MAC Player of the Year. This is her senior year. And so when she posted this, later on some of the comments, you see that she replies that I'm coming back for a 5th year and I'm coming back strong. And of course I'm excited for her, but me, being her advisor, go, you're graduating in the spring. Are you going to your classes this semester? Because you're an education major, you're supposed to be spending 16 to 20 hours a week at school teaching. How are you handling that with torn ACL, which Southeastern Ohio is not very accessible, I will say. It's a very mountainous area. I was able to reach out to her and say, hey, saw the news, happy to hear the surgery went well. It's great you're planning on coming back. Have you been going this semester? I was able to confirm that she was able to continue going to her classes. And then she said, yeah, I'm just going to come back and finish next fall. I said, okay, so what are you going to do in the spring then? She goes, well, I got classes. And I'm like, well, no, you have your full student teaching in the spring. So you can do that in the spring or the fall. And she goes, oh, well, I guess I need to come talk to you. That sounds like a good idea. And so we're able to do some work together, and she's currently applying to graduate school. Because she has that eligibility, but to be eligible, you have to be taking courses. And so but had I not known this on social media, I probably wouldn't have seen her until it had been almost too late. So it offers great insights that, like I said, otherwise would go unknown. Unfortunately, I have to skip that with some timing. But anyone know who the quote is? Who said it? That's a good guess. I like that. Kid president. He's a great kid. I like him. I like to leave with one of my favorite quotes. So I was a cross country and track runner in high school, and Steve Prefontaine, any runners? Steve Prefontaine, he's a runner from Oregon, ran in the US Olympics as well. And it's funny, if you see my high school team, we all grew our hair out to match him because he had long hair. But to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And you all do have a gift, so please, please share it. I just want to give some resources as closing. For those who aren't familiar, appreciativeadvising.net if you're looking to learn some more information. There's definitely loads of resources on there if you want to learn more. You can find me on Facebook. My Facebook is generally going to be more family driven. Of course, I'll friend you, but if you want to see lots and lots of photos of my children, that's a good place to go for that. Twitter, you'll find me as a little bit more of my professional setting. I use that primarily for the field of advising. I don't do a lot of family stuff on there. It's going to be much more about academic advising and higher education. My Twitter is just Ben_Forche. For Instagram, I have 5 actually, very, very different reasons. I have one for my children, one for I have a hobby in woodworking, so I have one for that. This one's more around advising, advisor.ben. And so you'll see various posts I've done, different initiatives, out of the box sort of stuff with that. I have a personal one, which is just Ben Forche. And then I also manage PCOE Advising, which is our office advising Instagram account. Several resources and books that are readily available if you want to go deeper. So the Appreciative Advising Revolution, which was what was based off of today. Workbook for anyone that are going to be training others or maybe using this in a class, what's the good activities. There is a college instruction, which is focused on more so on the college, like University 101, freshman seminar type course. Career aspirations, good for our grad students. You might want to take a look at that one. And then this idea of increasing persistence for college students. So a lot of information shared. I am fortunately in a position where I get to make a lot of the decisions, and I realize not everyone has that opportunity, but just the idea of the ripple effect. My previous institution, I quite frankly described as a place that was not for appreciative advising, they were against it. And so I thought there's no opportunity in my last institution, I was the only one. Well, 2 years ago at the Institute, one of my former colleagues came as an attendee. Absolutely blew my mind. I said, well, did someone tell you about this? Or, I mean, I'm curious why you're here. She goes, you told me about this. I was like, you listened? Like, you cared? You were interested? Like, you have no idea about these ripple effects. So start small, but you can make a difference where you are. So, the FAU is actually doing a post-evaluation of this. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment, jot down this link. If you do have the time, you can fill this out. I believe it's how many questions? 3 or 4 questions. So if you would mind taking this survey, I would appreciate that. I would appreciate it as well. Yeah, take a few minutes, appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll open up for questions.
So later this week, I actually have the opportunity to start developing an office. So where do you think, starting at a clean slate, where I should focus my energy in connecting with students via technology?
Any specific platform you're looking at?
So I'll be working with commuter first year and second year students.
Okay, great.
And particularly students who may be at low risk of persistence for various different reasons.
Okay, so from a brand new perspective, I would encourage trying to do some small focus groups with them. I think eventually you would probably end up on all of these platforms, but I wouldn't start there because they're probably all going to fail simultaneously. So I would start small, start with maybe 1 or 2, but the best way to decide which 2 is to ask them. Yeah, so maybe generating some focus groups of, what do you use? Why do you use it? What would be helpful? What would you like to see from us? Kind of get what they're looking for. And then once you have an idea of what they actually want, I would encourage a strategic communication plan. I do have an example I could email if you want of one, but that's where you're generating as one of my marketing professors used to say, what's in it for me kind of mindset. And so you're essentially establishing your givens, all the stuff you plan that you want them to know and you get across. I mean, you could probably spout all that off right now, what you want them to get out of your office, but then you have to mix in the fun stuff, right? And so then it's figuring out what are all those other opportunities, what other offices have synergy with those ideas to work essentially towards a common goal. But that would be my advice. Good luck.
What is the difference between this session and
So for the afternoon session, it's much more geared towards academic advisors. We will go through all 6 phases, so we'll go a little bit more in depth. I'll go a little bit more on the tools. from my understanding of the different audiences, is that this audience, it's better to have an idea of the tools. You might not have as much time or ability to use them, but having an idea of how they could be beneficial, versus the afternoon group, they might actually be selecting and using these tools a little bit more. Mm-hmm.
Somebody who didn't buy in your office that you had to change their.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a process, and I think I face it just because I am by far the youngest person in my office, and so technology, and I have a degree in technology. It's a lot of this comes naturally to me, and so I have one advisor who technology is not his interest area. He does not have a smartphone, and so starting small with him, trying to see what his interest areas are. And so what we essentially started with was kind of partner. And so he would team up with various people, but we would identify, what are you passionate about? What are you interested about? And so where we started was with our office Twitter account, PCOE advising on Twitter. Essentially myself and another team member manage that account, and we structure it and plan it out and all that. But we got him involved there as a starting place versus starting his own Twitter. But we asked him, well, what are your interest areas? And he served in the U.S. Army, and so he had an interest in, well, I know a little bit about what it's like to be a veteran student. And so he was able to provide some insights and gather some information, and we helped show him, he essentially provided all the content, and then we showed him how to share on Twitter. And we did something like that. We did a week-long social media class, myself and another colleague did for our college, and he was at all that. And for him, it's not necessarily that he wasn't necessarily opposed. He was opposed to the idea of how much time it would take him to learn how to do something like that. And so it is essentially creating opportunities for him to learn that he wasn't by himself. Because that was kind of the viewpoint that I'm gonna have to learn this myself. Like, you all know it already, so how, he felt he had to learn it by himself. So I think it's kind of extending that olive branch of, well, let's do it together. So, but it's still definitely a slow process, but he's buying in. So, yeah, good question. Mm-hmm.
What do you do in the case, like I understand they all know the protocol of the page and what to be posting, but there is a few people that like to step out of line and they post something. You're mandated to, you have to actually report what you see they post. What do you do in that case?
Are you talking about like on the text messaging or like?
Text messaging, Facebook.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we're quite honest with students. You know, if we see someone that posted something they weren't supposed to, we first, being a mandated reporter, your first call, of course, is with our equity office, which is our legal office. It's weird. It's our legal office as well. Foremost, we go there, and then working with them about how can we educate the student. Because we approach it from an education perspective, an education opportunity. I guess to give you an example, maybe this might help a little bit. We had a student, one of our educators, she was in her junior year and went on spring break and showed a little bit too much of herself and was perfectly fine with that and posted it. And so we brought her, actually, we have a board, a college board, a credential review board. It's myself, our assistant dean, director of assessment. It's department chair. It's designed to be a scary board. We brought this student in and we just had a conversation. We weren't a board to yell at her. We were a board to just explain, you know, you're looking at a field of education. This is readily available. How would you feel if one of your children's teachers had this? And so it's that re-education piece. Of course, we explain it's in your best interest to get rid of that photo as soon as you possibly can. But
that part I see, you know, where you can actually share and educate and block whatever was posted. But in the field where, like with the shooting of the kids, where people have actually seen things that shouldn't have been out there, and it's major for the student himself to have posted that, and people didn't report it. In time, or it was reported, but whatever the scenario where you see something that had to be reported, what does the university or, you know, what the individual has to do in that case?
It's definitely check with your legal departments because you'll get different definitions. Being a mandated reporter, we're state arms, they're individuals, so they have First Amendment rights. And so you can only go so far. If it's their choice to leave it out there, that's their choice, but you want to educate them. Let them know just want to let you know this could happen. Because you put this out there, just making sure they have a full understanding. But you got, because if, in the example you gave, it's pretty cut and clear, but maybe one example, we had a far right-wing speaker on campus last week, and the students were posting various messages about that, and that's their choice if they want to do that. But where our College of Communications had to be careful, they were okay to advertise for the event, but they essentially had retweeted a quote that was shared at the event. And that retweet, which was, it was a good comment. I mean, what was said, if you looked at the comment as is, there was nothing wrong. You know, it wasn't left, wasn't right. It was a good comment. And it was kind of like a positive message. But it was coming from a right wing. And so it was an endorsement for that candidate. And so you just got to be very careful. That's what I always tell my office. Anything political or religious, don't touch it. Just leave it alone. Other people can talk about that. Yeah, good question. It's a tough. It's social media especially. We're still in our infancy. Most HR, most legal don't have rules for you. Yeah, so it's tough.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for the training. We definitely encourage you to visit that particular website. Please complete the survey. In the future, we plan on doing this training again. So you want to get your feedback and make sure that you're armed with all the information that you need. And thanks, Ben.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. All right.